Welcome everybody to a look at a brand new StudioCanal 4K release, and it is 1994's Léon the Professional, originally known as The Professional in the US and Léon everywhere else, so they've kind of basically merged the titles together after the fact. So yeah, this is directed by Luc Besson, who also did the really rather fantastic The Fifth Element, as well as Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets and La Femme Nikita, which this seems like a subsequent film to that film. And depending on which version you watch, you're either going to get in at clocking at 110 minutes long or 133 minutes long. And it's an action thriller that stars Jean Reno, who was also in La Femme Nikita, Mission Impossible, and Ronin, as well as Natalie Portman, who was in Black Swan, V for Vendetta, Jackie, and Annihilation. And finally, you've got the likes of Gary Oldman, who was in the Batman trilogy from Christopher Nolan, The Fifth Element, True Romance, and Romeo is Bleeding. And finally, Danny Aiello, who was in the Do the Right Thing and The Stuff. And yeah, weirdly enough, this feels like an extension of both Do the Right Thing and La Femme Nikita, because both Jean Reno and Danny Aiello feel like they're playing their characters in their respective films before this one, because Danny Aiello in Do the Right Thing was an Italian guy. He was living in New York. He owned a restaurant come pizza place in that film, and he sort of is that in that kind of same business in this film, although he's also hiring hitmen in this one. And then Jean Reno was also known as the cleaner in La Femme Nikita. So, and that is basically his job in this one. So Léon is the top hitman in New York, has earned a rep as an effective cleaner, but when his next door neighbours are wiped out by a loose cannon DEA agent, he becomes the unwilling custodian of a 12-year-old Matilda. Before long, Matilda's thoughts turn to revenge, and she considers following in Leon's footsteps. So this does come, like I said, come across as a somewhat expansion of La Femme Nikita. However, unlike that film, this has more characters to care about and a genuinely scary villain in the form of Norman Stansfield, played by the magnificent Gary Oldman. Although, granted, he's not in a large portion of the film. He's in the first bit where, Matilda's family gets killed. Then it mainly concentrates on them two. There's no real other characters at all outside of them two for a good portion of the time. And then he reappears basically in the final act or so. But he's really, really impactful as a villain. He's easily one of my favourite villains in a film. And Jean Reno and Natalie Portman also work well together. The action scenes are great. I like the majority of the plot and script. The score by Eric Serra is great as well. I can hear some elements in this that would be used in the likes of GoldenEye, while it also has a little bit of a die-hard kind of aspect to it as well. And the visual style, along with the direction, is spot on. So, yeah, overall, a fantastic release. I love the look of the steelbook that it's got going on, especially with their rimmed glasses being particularly shiny, as you can see. And then we've got Gary Oldman on the reverse as Norman Stansfield. Nice to see that they've not gone with any writing or anything on the bottom there. And then we have 3 discs in this release, 2 Blu-rays, because there are 2 different versions of the film, and then the 4K itself, which has both versions on the same disc. So there's the director's cut, theatrical cut there, and the director's and theatrical cut on the 4K on that side there. And in terms of special features, we have new interview with Andre Lebeau, who is the technical director on the film. That's the only feature on the Ultra HD disc, by the way. But on the Blu-ray discs, we've got on the director's cut disc, we've got the new interview with Thierry Arbogast, who was cinematographer, new interview with Sylvie Landra, who was film editor, and new interview with Alain Kruger, who is a journalist. And then on the theatrical cut disc, we've got a new interview with Andre Lebeau, again, technical director. So that's probably the same one that is on the Ultra HD disc, I imagine. So yeah, I've only seen the theatrical cut, which comes in at 110 minutes long. It's the only one I've ever seen before, so I didn't see any reason to go spend more time on a director's cut, which even Luc Besson says isn't his favourite version of the film. He calls that the long version. He doesn't call it a director's cut in of itself. So yeah, with that being the case, and the fact that it's apparently an inferior film to the theatrical cut, I just didn't see the point in going into that, especially since Time is at a minimum at this time of year, so yeah, watching a 2 hour plus film that is basically the same as what I've seen already just didn't seem necessary. And I did try and look at this film through the lens of recent events in terms of the Me Too movement, as a lot of people have been saying that this is basically a film to justify Luc Besson's relationships at the time, because he did get married, I think, to a 15-year-old, which is the legal age minimum in France, I believe, but obviously that does not justify it whatsoever. But some people have said that this film was basically trying to justify his own relationships at the time. Personally, outside of a couple of brief elements or moments in the film, I don't quite see that at all. I don't think Léon has any physical attraction to Matilda. I don't think he has any want to be attracted to Matilda. Um, Especially since he does actually acknowledge that she is a child, she is 12, she shouldn't be in the business of killing people or, you know, in these violent situations that she's trying to put herself in or anything like that. Whereas Gary Oldman's character, Norman Stansfield, he comes across far more creepy. He actually has a scene where he's touching her face, he's putting his finger in her lips and stuff like that. That comes across as something that is creepy, and he is ultimately the bad guy. So I see that's a scene like condemning that kind of thing at the end of the day. So, but I'm coming at it from my angle, so whether or not I'm wrong or not, I don't know. But personally, I just don't think it's a justification for Luc Besson's own personal life and relationships, to be honest. So, yeah, and on the end of the day, I do think it's a perfectly great action thriller. It's one of the best from the 90s, personally. 1994 was a great year for action films because obviously we also had Speed. This isn't quite as good as that. It's 4.5 out of 5, where I was good for like Speed 5 out of 5. But yeah, it's still a great effort, and yeah, I really, really do like the look of it. New York, for instance, does look really rather nice in this film, and yeah, the action scenes are also glorious with plenty of violence throughout, and the relationship between the two leads, it's a friendly relationship. It's not a sexual or intimate one whatsoever. It works really well, and it really does anchor the film to make it that bit better than your other typical kind of action thriller from that period. So yeah, it's well worth watching if you haven't seen it already. I can't say I will recommend the director's cut because obviously I've not seen it, but the theatrical cut is as great as you probably could get from that period, and really does rival the likes of Fifth Element from Luc Besson as well. So yeah, but if you have seen this film before, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.